Good morning, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. Our Chairman, Tom McDaniels, is not available today, so I'm Dee Morales, and I'll be conducting the meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of July 29th. Do we have any additions or corrections?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The minutes of the July 29th meeting are approved. Item 3 on the agenda is to recommend resolution renewing the MAPS 3 program consultant service contract with ADG Inc., retroactive to July 1st, 2003 and expiring June 30th, 2014, and approving amendment number 5 to the MAPS 3 program consultant service contract, fee increase of $1,774,085, retroactive to July 1st, 2013, and project M3G001. David?
Thank you. This is our annual contract that's renewed for the services that we have with ADG, the invaluable services that they provide for us for reviewing of plans and the inspection services and those kind of services that we get from them. So as I said, this is the annual renewal. It's a renewal of the contract that's been in place for 3 years, I believe.
I move approval of the renewal of the contract for ADG.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved, and our compliments to AGG for always being there for us. We appreciate that. Item number 4, to recommend resolution approving final plans and specifications for MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 2, Project 2, improvements, and authorizing the city clerk to advertise for bids to be received October 1st, 2003, Project M3R005A. David, would you address that?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chairman. This is the second phase of the river projects that we have, and we have Tim Johnson here today to give you a quick presentation on that. Brent?
Well, while we're waiting for the board to come down, I appreciate the opportunity to come down again and make this presentation. Here we go. Just as a preamble, we were here a month ago talking about the preliminary report. We moved very quickly after the approval of that to get into these final plans to make this deadline to allow the project to be built and the critical part of the project to be constructed during the lowering the river again from about December 1st to March. And so that's the way these plans have been set up. One other thing that we did, and the first couple of slides talk about it, is in our preliminary report we recommended that we go ahead and advertise and receive bids for procurement of materials for the dock because of a short time frame to meet the October USA our national event that will be held down there. Go ahead and go on. Oh, I've got the button now. I'm sorry. There we go. So we did that. That was project 1 of this phase 2, and we received bids October 13th or August 13th, and we've recommended for award, which that is moving forward to allow us to procure and have installed on the river the docks for the starting gates, the judging platforms, as well as some portage docks for awards and loading and unloading off of some boats and kayaks. So project 2, once again, to go over it briefly, it included these items that I'm going to talk about. However, like the LED lighting, for example, we had, in the subcommittee meetings and in our discussions with the staff, we've come up with an alternate to that. It still is LED lighting, but it'll be through the tops of the towers and not up and down the light towers that was originally proposed. So we think this is a good solution and actually provides better activity of lighting controlled by the finish line tower. Cable crossover markers, very critical to this project. The recent rains has washed out some of the old system that's been in there, and it's been just a wrestling match for the operators down there to keep ahead of the races that are coming up because the system has just worn and torn from previous storms. This particular cabling system is being designed more heavy-duty. It's also designed to be more easily lowered into the bottom of the river through winches. We are also putting in a redundant, for lack of better words, it's a snag system upstream, so any logs or cars or anything that come floating down, we're in hopes of being able to snag those and drift them to the side before they get into the system and do any damage. We are also working with COTPA on making sure that those are located in such a way that they don't cause any problems for the Devon cruisers. Utility infrastructure, we're going to be running a bundle of cables, including electrical, sound, lighting, and communications across the river one time. We originally proposed to do it 5 times. We figured out a way to do it one time, which is going to be a great savings to the project. The sound infrastructure, we're working with the sound specialists as well as the video specialists and have specified equipment that matches what's out there or works with what's out there so there won't be any interface problems. The gateway enhancement is our signage. I'll show you that. The new access ramp is again, in our original preliminary studies, we had 4 ramps. We've now pared that down to 1. Very long ramp to allow for the full assembly of the gate system and testing before it goes into the water. So this is the operator's request, and we were able to make that work. Storage building is something that got added to the MAPS project in that we have all this expensive equipment, and there's a need to protect it. Right now it's in a fenced-in area open to the elements, and this building would provide the storage for that and other parts and pieces they use down there. And the final additional add alternate is the electrical transformer screens. We have wound this into our design for the signs so that we're working with Rand Elliott's office, who worked on the master plan, and we've specified a transformer screening for the 5 transformers that are out there on the north side of the river that'll coincide with our signage and replace some of the signs we'd proposed. So working together to try and get everything done within the budget. So the overall site, again, from the finish line to the 2,000 mark, all these places will have, except for one's not shown here, the 200 we added into the project. So the finish line, 200, 500,000, 1,500, 2,000, all will have towers, which I'll show you here in a minute. And they'll all be interconnected with lighting and sound and video access. The cabling system at the end of the day will look something like this. This is an example of what the cabling, any of those of you that have been down there during the event, these red and white balls that you see in this image, how close and tight they are, ours are very few and far between down there right now because of the damage. This is the sign, the master sign layout sheet. The various colors depict various types of signs. The red dots along 6th Street are generally the enclosures for the OG&E transformers. The purple signs are the major entry signs, one at Lincoln and then one at 6th and Lincoln. Signage, this is the schematic of the signs. These will all be backlit. The ribs that you see there will be a blue backlit image. So we believe they'll be very attractive. And then we also, at the request of the operators down there, added one more sign type, and it's just for a map to be interchanged like you see at the zoo. As people are walking around, they can see a map where they are. This is the 5 transformer locations. Hard to see on that image, but here's the 3D that shows what they'll look like. So these enclosures that you see, the boxes with the fellow with his hands in his pocket standing next to him, those are what end up being the sign, and it'll have the labels of the various things we're trying to point out in the signage. And this is an example of the tower. The color of the letters and the color of the tower will be as shown here. We are pushing them out to the edge of the riprap, right at the top of the edge of the riprap. On the south side, allowing about an 8 to 12 foot clear space, so that at some point in time a path could be through here for the coaches to ride their bikes or their golf carts to coach their team as they're training. Here's a plan view. You can see how close we are to the top of the riprap, and then the judge, as he stands on the platform, will be actually over the water, having a clear view of the boat people. And there's another isometric view. The items that are included inside this enclosure are demountable. They're just a table. We're providing plugs for some ambient lighting and for their computers to plug in, and computer connections back to the finish line tower. The ramp, as I mentioned, this image shows both the ramp and storage building. The bottom right of that picture shows the fenced-in area that exists now. That's what they're storing their stuff in. It's surrounded by trees. You can barely see where they are, so we anticipate this building will blend in as well. We've gone to the Scenic River Overlay. They've approved the building. They've approved our towers, and we're ready to go forward with this project. The ramp, as I mentioned, is very long and runs parallel to the edge of the waterway to allow that slope to be gentle as it goes down and be fairly uniform for the easy assembly and installation of the starting gates. This is just an aerial view to kind of show you how much screening we already have that's naturally in place, and we intend to keep all that so the building will be tucked behind those trees. And then finally, our budget, the first two items are items that we've actually procured or have under procurement. The docks and then the starting systems are in place. The rest of the items, as I mentioned, have been adjusted accordingly to current estimates as we finish the plans up. So we believe that we still, even with the 5% contingency, are within budget. We still anticipate some savings in a couple of these items that will hopefully help pay for at least the building that we need so desperately down there. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or any questions from the audience?
Estimated construction cost $3.871 million, and on here we're looking at $4.2 million. What's the difference in those numbers?
Well, it also includes the starting systems and the docks that Tim was talking about that are being done separately. The starting systems were done a year ago.
So that's a $600,000 difference.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Our committees worked very hard on this. We're very grateful to you. I think this is a good plan, and I'd like to call for approval.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is approved. Thank you, Tim. The next item on the agenda is a recommended resolution accepting MAPS 3 Oklahoma State Fairgrounds Phase 1 improvements, preliminary site grading, and placing the maintenance bond into effect, which is project M3F001.
Madam Vice Chairman, this is the first phase of the Fairgrounds project. If you recall, we let this project that was the grading that was to be done out there at the Fairgrounds prior to the parking project. So that project is finished. It's all done in accordance with the plans, and we're ready to accept that. So that's the resolution here.
Okay, Bob, do you have anything?
Yeah, this was recommended for approval by the Fairgrounds Subcommittee yesterday. I do note, at least off a copy of the agenda I have, we did make a correction. Yesterday, two of the people that were listed as participating in the final inspection are actually city employees rather than state fair employees.
That's correct.
I believe that was Mr. New and Mr. Terry.
Yes.
So on the final form of the resolution, we just need to correct that.
Well, it's not in the resolution, it's in the memo. I want to make sure that that is corrected when it goes to council.
But it does come with a recommendation of approval from the committee.
Okay. Is there a nomination for approval?
I'll move we approve.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That resolution is accepted and approved. Item number 6, recommend resolution approving MAPS 3 Transit Modern Streetcar Route Framework Project M3S003. David?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chairman. The subcommittee and staff and even the advisory board has worked very hard on getting to this point, so we're very happy to bring to you today the final route framework for the modern streetcar, and we have Mr. Lee Nichols here with Jacobs Engineering to give you a quick presentation on this.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present the final route framework to you today. Also with me today is Mark Dorn with URS, and so there we go. What we're going to talk about today, I'll go over the project evolution to how we got to where we're at today, our evaluation process, the phasing and funding scenarios, the shortlisted conceptual routes, our recommended route framework, and then get a discussion briefly about the storage and maintenance facility evaluation and next steps. So back in 2006, this all started with the approval of the fixed guideway study, which was a study done through COPTA, which was the 30-year transit plan for Oklahoma City and the metropolitan area. Now, the plan recommended a series of transit alternatives, which included bus rapid transit, commuter rail, enhanced bus, and a downtown streetcar circulator. In 2008, COPTA began the alternatives analysis with Let's Talk Transit. This was a series of 7 public meetings that had about 300 participants and 1,100 online and in comments received from the public meetings. In 2009, the MAPS 3 election was approved. It was streetcar being on that election. In 2010, COPTA received the Tiger II planning grant, which helped look at items such as a health impact assessment, livability principles, to do some visualizations on the proposed streetcar, and that study is currently ongoing. 2011, the alternatives analysis wrapped up with approval of the locally preferred alternative. Many of you have seen this. It consisted of 2 routes, one out to the Health Science Center and a core route from Midtown to downtown and Bricktown. In 2012, we had the introduction of the completion of the study of the intermodal hub study, which recommended Santa Fe Station as the site for the intermodal hub. And also the MAP Streetcar Subcommittee recommended Concept 1 as their preferred route. So here we are today. Beginning of 2013, we began a fresh eyes route evaluation, and today we're presenting you the selection of the recommended route framework. So our evaluation, as I just mentioned, we started off with the locally preferred alternative in Concept 1. Then we conducted a fresh eyes look. We looked at downtown. We looked at many possible route alternatives within downtown and came up with 8 potential route options. From those 8 route options, we conducted our evaluation and came up with 4 conceptual route options as our short list. From there, and that we presented that a couple months ago. In this past 2 months, we've had another second Fresh Eyes workshop. We've had a public meeting and also input from our subcommittee, and we refined our evaluation to get to today where we have our recommended route framework. And I'll turn it over to Mark.
I'm Mark Dorn with URS. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning. We're with the study of the different alignments, we're committed to still deliver the first phase for that budgeted of $104 million, or 94 actually for the streetcar, and then maintaining an allowance or a budget of $24.7 million for the phase 2 alignment. Oops, how come I went backwards? There we go. So Lee mentioned the 4 candidate routes that we identified after the first phase. Just very briefly, the hybrid route was so named because it was a combination of some of our other candidate routes from the 8 that we were studying. Basically, it served, we identified the need to connect to the transit center as a very high priority, and it also served the heart of Midtown and some of the economic development, but one of the detractors was that it missed the Broadway automobile alley. The reverse LPA is essentially the same phase one that you saw before, but we through the utility investigation that was conducted a year ago, because of some of the major Tri-Gen trunk facilities there, if you reverse the direction, we were able to avoid those impacts and costs. And so there was also some other factors with legibility that we thought reversing that direction would be more beneficial. But then we had the Zeta, which combined the benefits of connecting to the transit center and serving Automobile Alley, as well as serving the heart of Midtown. And through that initial review, we identified the Zeta Plus, which there was some questions of how important was it to serve the MAPS Park during that first phase. So those were the 4 candidates that we took to the second level of screening. And what came out is what we call our framework to continue into project development. It is the Zeta route, and essentially the reasons are because we are making the best. It is the route that best connects all the major destinations, including the downtown transit center and Automobile Alley and the intermodal hub and some of the MAPS projects as well. Traveling southbound on Robinson in the core of, or in the heart of downtown, so between 4th Street and Sheridan, that's where all the Tri-Gen facilities are. If we're traveling southbound, we'll be able to avoid those impacts. We're 1 block away from the park. We feel that is sufficient for the phase 1, knowing that a phase 2 can complete that connection. There's also an added benefit that we're not, with the Zeta Plus, we actually surrounded the convention center site, which would add to complexity to its construction. Because we're serving Automobile Alley and Midtown, we're really maximizing the ability to catalyze development. So the alignment is 4.5 miles of single track. Right now, we didn't do detailed cost estimates, but we actually projected the work done before on the alternatives analysis to come up with to make sure we're in the range, and we're projecting a cost of $99 to $109 million. But I've built 12 of these projects, and we're committed to meet that $94 million phase 1 budget, and we have a lot of tricks up our sleeves, a lot of lessons learned that we think we can accomplish that for you. We call this a framework because we're not quite done with the alignment selection. There's a couple options that we're carrying forward that we will study in the next phase of analysis. And essentially what they are is in the Midtown area. So south of Midtown, the alignment is pretty set according to our recommendation. That will be southbound on Robinson, turning into Bricktown on Sheridan, and then wrapping around and coming westbound on Reno, heading north on Hudson, serving the transit center, and then cutting to the east back to serve Midtown. So north of 4th Street, we'll be looking at 2 options, and one is to put 2 tracks on Automobile Alley and on Broadway, north of 4th Street, or to have a coupling, so northbound on Broadway and southbound on Robinson. So we'll be looking at such things as how it will integrate into the street, what will it look like, are there major utility impacts, we'll look at the costs, and as well as, are there any traffic impacts especially with the turns that go onto and off of the streets. The other option is how to serve the Midtown district, And one variation of the LPA that was advanced in 2011 was that the service was on 12th or 11th and 13th. And we actually pulled our alignment, if you look closely, we pulled that alignment just a little bit further south. We think that there's more economic development potential on 10th. We want to make sure that we think there's a benefit to serve St. Anthony campus directly. And so the options we're going to look at are a couplet, so one track on 10th and the other track on 11th, and so that will be a loop as the streetcar terminates, and that could be clockwise or counterclockwise. And another option will be to have what we call the tail track option, where 2 tracks will turn onto 10th, head up to the circle at Walker, and terminate somewhere in that vicinity of where the traffic circle is. So those are our design options, and as you see, our cost projections for the operating are consistent with the LPA, which are in the $2.5 to $3 million a year. Lee, you want to talk about the maintenance facility?
So in conjunction of studying the route alternatives, we also looked at potential areas for the maintenance facility. And some of the criteria we used to evaluate our maintenance facility sites is we looked at the alignment, how does the site relate to the alignment, the distance the track you have to build to get from the end of the line to the maintenance facility, traffic impacts, how does the location of the maintenance facility support future route extensions, the facility requirements, short-term and long-term requirements. We want to make sure the facility not only can accommodate what we're planning in Phase 1, but also Phase 2 and possibly future extensions down the road. Urban adaptability. How does the site fit into the urban context, the land use that's there existing today? How does it fit with the zoning requirements? Also, look at any cultural and historical impacts and try and make sure we avoid those with the site of the maintenance facility. And also real estate. Make sure there's no displacement of businesses or residents, and that the site does support economic development. Wrong button, wrong way. So we have narrowed down our sites. We have 4 potential areas for the maintenance facility. 2 are located in Bricktown, north of, in between the rail line and I guess it's the parking lot just north of ACOG and the Bricktown Police Station. There's a site to east of Mickey Mantle and a site to the west of Mickey Mantle. A third site is just east of Lincoln, in between Lincoln and 235. And then our 4th site is down south by Dexter Union Station, which you can see could be accommodated, definitely fits into the future extension of the park, connection down to the park. So our next steps is to determine the vehicle propulsion, whether it's, there's a lot of discussion of whether the vehicle needs to be completely off-wire or is it an on-wire, off-wire vehicle. If it is, that's called a hybrid vehicle. So if it is a hybrid vehicle, where will those sections be where the vehicle is on-wire or they're off-wire? We need to finalize the storage maintenance facility location and begin design of that facility, and also get into preliminary engineering, which includes looking at those design options and refining those and coming up with the final route. Then we get into rail and vehicle procurement and develop an economic development plan for the corridor itself. So once we have the preferred route, is develop an economic development plan for that route to how the city can entice and spur the economic development, and then get into Phase 2 route planning to see where that second phase is going to go. So with that, we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lee. That was great. And so our subcommittee voted on this yesterday, and we were unanimous with moving forward that Zeta plan with further investigation double tracking Broadway or tail track in Midtown. And so we're very pleased with it, and actually one of our committee members, Jeff Bezek, with some help, made a video showing what the route looks like from the passenger's perspective, right? He put a camera on his car and literally drove the route at the speed that the streetcar would go. And I gotta say, it's really cool. Like, it'll give you goosebumps, so I'm excited for when that comes out. It's pretty amazing how much area that covers. When you look at it on a map, it's what, like 4 inches tall? But when you actually get on the route and cover that distance, it covers a lot of area. And then you see the areas that it passes by and that it serves. It serves the transit center, which is really important. It serves a lot of development that's happening or that's being contemplated, happening right along that corridor. And it touches a lot of places that people want to be, a lot of hot spots. But also there's still lots that are available for development that could even further densify that area. So we were really pleased with the work that was done, and very confident that it'll be something that we can be proud of moving forward.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your great report. We do have some questions from the community, and could we ask Dina Madola to come up, please? Hi, Dina.
You don't shoot messengers, do you? I'm not on? No, we're not on. You're not on?
No.
Okay. I do not represent any group of people, but I have been asking around the community in various areas of the community, and their perception of the streetcar is not yours. The main thing I'm getting from people out in the outlying areas is that this route that you proposed is for the rich. And when they ask you who's going to ride it, I can only say, well, the people who work and live downtown primarily, I guess, and the visitors to town will be using it. And the perception is that it's a route for the rich to get richer. So I think if you want the public's support for any further development of the streetcar plans, if you're going to go back and ask them for money, then you have to connect the dots. How will this streetcar route help them when they cannot get a bus to work? You've got to spell it out. People do not know how. I sat by a lady just the other night in a town hall meeting, and she said, I don't want my tax money to go to this streetcar. She said, I have 6 grandbabies who need to be fed and clothed. So it was totally out of her understanding how this could ever help her. So if you can put a face to how this project will trickle down to people in the outlying areas, how is it going to help them? And it may be obvious to you, but it's not obvious to a lot of people. So your town hall meetings, I think, or meetings, would be very helpful before you send this on to council. Because they are beginning to get pretty vocal about it. And there are other questions like, will they ever have an input in terms of your overhead lines? You know, the perception is, well, they've got the money, they're going to do what they want. We don't have any more way to relate to it. So will they have options as far as choosing those overhead line designs? Will they have a chance to vote on what color it's going to be? Or a chance to have some input about where the stops are going to be? And I do think that the plan does not address the needs of the people in the bus transit hub right now. It plans to stop on a corner that is opposite of the hub. If you've ever spent any time down there, you will understand what disabled means and how difficult it is to get from one side of that bus terminal across a street, up a curb, and onto a streetcar. I know there are reasons for not choosing to go down 6th Street instead of 4th. I understand those reasons, but I think you're doing a large disservice to disabled. And the question comes up, if this streetcar goes down the middle of the street, how does somebody in a wheelchair get from the curb onto the street and onto the streetcar? You know, they go down the street and wait out in the middle. I don't know. But there are questions like that that have not ever been addressed. So I'm hoping that you will take a little time and a little breather from this process and have a few more meetings out in the community. People cannot come in 3:30 in the afternoon if they're working. So, thank you very much.
We appreciate your comments very much, and I'm sure Nathaniel and his outstanding committee will address some of those, so thank you. Our next member of the public that would like to address us is Joe Nelson, please. Welcome.
How are you? My name is Joe Sarge Nelson, and I was at your meeting over at the Civic Center last night. Oklahoma City is naturally on a rise, and I commend everything we're trying to do. I think we're going a little too fast. Being a general contractor, I like the concept of the rail, but Oklahoma City is only 606 square miles. Our present transit system, which is unlimited and mobile, is in trouble. And when it's in trouble, that's in trouble. That is fixed to 4.57 miles, I think the way you all put it last night. It is for the business community. Oklahoma City is not ready to compete like Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, and places like that, because we're not even close to being that same size. This is limited, and $26 million per mile is pretty expensive on the taxpayers that right now, with a transit system that's already in trouble. If it wasn't in trouble, this would move right along with it. It'd be great. But we are in trouble, and I would like to thank the people, and especially this MAPS committee. They've done a magnificent job. I'm not going to deny that. I wish Oklahoma City could really move on it, and the people have voted on it, but they're going to be paying for this thing. When their grandchildren's grandchildren are growing up, they're still going to be paying for something that 60% of Oklahoma City is never going to get to ride on. It's all strictly downtown, and a lot of the people in the outside areas can't get down here to begin with. I did ask the City Hall or the council 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago to suspend the funding pending an internal investigation as to how we can properly raise the money to make this dream come true. Right now, we are in financial trouble, and we're spending money the taxpayers do not have. And like I say, I'm not downgrading what you've done. You've done a suspended job. I mean, I couldn't even begin to tell you how well it is. But right now, Oklahoma City's not ready for this thing. And I'm at a point right now, I've given to Mrs. Kersey a number of requests that I'd like to have investigated to find out why we're in downtown, Bricktown, and Midtown, and Automobile Alley, and that's the only place this thing goes. Now, they tried it in Detroit. They went belly up, bankrupt. That's a matter of public record. Denver is the only one that's got one end of the city to the other rail. L.A., I've been on their rails before, but they've been there a lot of years. And Oklahoma City is nowhere in competition with any of these people. And I would ask somebody to reconsider and put this thing on a little better investigative plan before we even start this thing. I know it's coming up pretty quick, but look into it a little deeper before the taxpayers get involved in something that we're not going to be able to afford to pay for. I thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate that. We have before us a resolution. I'm sorry.
Dee, I just have a thought listening to this. I frankly empathize with what our guest speakers have said today, but the fact of the matter is capital projects for buses were not part of MAPS. What was part of MAPS is 5 miles of streetcars, and quite frankly, although some of us would and do hope and wish that we would have more money for public transit, and believe me, I understand that. Again, that was not part of MAPS, and the streetcar was a very popular part of why people voted for MAPS. So it seems to me that the concerns that have been expressed today, and I've heard time and time again, although are legitimate, just don't deal with the basic reality of the voters passed MAPS. This was part of MAPS. And when you look at impact, and you look at only being able, because of the streetcar, to do about 5 miles of streetcar, quite frankly, the best impact is to do it in the downtown area. So I just would ask everyone to kind of think about that in terms of what MAPS voted for was a downtown streetcar. Unfortunately, it wasn't for spending a lot more money on buses and routes. And couldn't do much with routes anyway because MAPS is a capital project, and it's just about building things. I think there are other ways and advocates who will be out there, and certainly I hope will be out there advocating for buses and public transit and expansion. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much. Nathaniel, do you have any comments?
I'll just echo that. I think we all share the same vision for what we want transit to look like. I think we're all there with what that vision looks like. What we're doing right now is the capital-intensive part. As Mike mentioned, this is the capital part. And those expensive parts are the most painful. They're really hard to push through once you really look at how much it costs. But we got to be able to do it because that's how we get to that shared vision of an improved transit that has a different modes of transit, that has not just a streetcar, but has the buses, has a light rail. But this is that first big step that I think is going to be a step change, a new paradigm for the city's transportation.
Any other comments?
One other thing to remember also is the comment about grandchildren paying for this. MAPS is a pay-as-you-go. The day that it opens, it's paid for, so that needs to be kept in mind.
Nathaniel, just a question about the 4 options. Were the options rank ordered, or was it after the evaluation it was just so clear that the option that is recommendation that's here today was just the clear choice?
They each had a score, and so based on the different criteria that our subcommittee helped kind of weight, Jacobs then applied that scoring technique to a number of routes, not just the 4 that you see. And those 4 all came up really high. 5.8 and 6.0 is considered basically the same thing when you're doing kind of semi-quantitative scoring. And so once those 4 were high graded, is then just a series of meetings both between our subcommittee and fresh eyes, then just individual conversations and surveys from citizens. That one just kind of rose to the top. There wasn't I don't think at any point anybody was asked to say, tell me your number 1 and then number 2 and 3 and 4. That one kept coming up, and then when it came time to actually, for people to say what they liked and disliked about various routes, the Zeta route got a lot of likes, a lot of positives, and other routes didn't get as many. So I don't know if that really answered your question very well, but it was a very kind of organic process of several meetings and conversations to get to that 1 out of the 4.
Well, off the top of your head, again, there may not be. I think you might have answered this. But was there a particular variable or a particular option that this one has that's kind of what made it?
Right. The things that really helped it out was that it connects to the transit center. Automobile alley was also considered very important, so it's on there. It may end up being a double track or a couplet, yet to be determined. Also, the fact that logistically, the way it interacts with the park. So the fact that it doesn't wrap around the convention center, it caused a logistical problem, that helps. But at the same time, with Phase 2, it will interact directly with the park. I think those are some of the big things. It's also it's pretty legible. I think in one sentence you could describe to somebody how the route goes. And so it's just kind of legible and intuitive. So those are probably the big 3 or 4 things that helped it rise at the top.
I have one comment. Well, first of all, great work. I'm really excited about the route that we have proposed in front of us today with Zeta. One of the things I do have some concern with is the future facility site that's pinned, maintenance facility, just west of Union Station, adjacent to the park. Certainly the park subcommittee is still working on the draft master plan for the park. And then paying very close attention to what the consultants will say that the Alliance for Economic Development are working with, but certainly that area west of the park is probably the most prime real estate for development for housing, and certainly within the park itself, we all consider the Union Station to be our crown jewel and a great center that will be developed. And so I'm a little bit concerned about looking at putting a maintenance facility that close to that development, and just hope as things move forward, we look at that very carefully.
Point taken and appreciated. They're not looking at using the Union Station itself. They're looking at being nearby. So even if it were to go there, we'd want to make sure that, I think your committee would be the first one we'd go to make sure that it's incorporated well as far as design. There's actually some really good examples of maintenance facilities throughout the country that are aesthetically pleasing, and in some cases you can't even really see that they're there because they're incorporated well with the surroundings. So our committee hasn't stated any kind of preference over where it goes, but if that did rise to the top, then we would certainly want to get with you and your folks about how it looks and works with the surrounding area.
And 2 other things to consider is the building can possibly be designed as a dual use, either having apartments or retail or business in the upper floors of it. And then also the track to get from the Phase 1 track to the maintenance facility lays the framework for Phase 2 to go down the west side of the park. And that would be paid for under Phase 1 and the maintenance facility part and not included. So it gives you a little bit better opportunity to expand some of the Phase 2 options.
Okay, Bob, you had a question?
Well, just a quick comment and a question. I was reminded as we were listening to some of the comments that the canal is downtown. It doesn't serve the suburbs. You have to come downtown to use it, but it's a tremendously valuable asset to the whole city. And to my mind, the streetcar was not, as Michael was saying, was not intended to be a be-all and end-all to serve all of the public transit needs of the city. And I agree, we're desperately in need of better public transit in a lot of areas. I live in the suburbs and have no way of relying on public transit to get to my office downtown. And I hope somewhere in the future we're addressing those issues, but this is an incremental process. And adding the streetcar, even though it's very small in scope, is very critical to the development of the whole city. And by adding this increment to what we're doing here and making it intermodal, connecting to those other means of transportation, we expand the value of the downtown to the rest of the city as a whole. And my question really is, I assume I'm correct, that we will be addressing ADA issues and things of that sort, so that we really, these are just very broad conceptual route determinations at this point, and those fine details will all be worked out, and all those things will be taken into account as we move along in the planning stage. And my question is, I assume we can count on all of those factors being considered as we get into the weeds, really some of the details of that.
Mr. Nealon, that's exactly right. There's been a lot of discussion at the subcommittee level and at the public meetings, and the Jacobs Group is, and URS is used to doing these, and ADA concerns have been at the forefront. So as you said, when we get to the details, we'll make sure all that is taken care of. We're certainly conscious of that.
And one final thought. I know your committee has looked at the issue of operational costs. I suppose, even when I'm asking this question, the routes themselves have no direct relationship between the operational costs?
They do affect operational costs a little bit. And so we saw some kind of estimates at some point about how the different routes affect operational costs. It's pretty marginal, plus or minus 20%. So this route has a $2.5 to $3 million operational cost. In our original charter, as far as what our subcommittee is supposed to do, it originally spelled out that we need to think about operational costs. We've been thinking about it since 2010. And of the 12 streetcar projects in the country, ours is the last to be operational. Yet we're already, it's going to be operational in 2017. Yet we're already now, thinking about that. We got a great update yesterday from Kathy O'Connor about ideas for how a bid might be able to help fund that. There's something in General Record with one of our subcommittee members, Mark, about how operational costs can be covered through different ideas. And so, and Jim Couch has stated that certainly, we can cover that cost. Streetcars very high capital cost, very low operational costs. But to answer your question, there is some difference with how the route looks, but it's very marginal. It's almost within margin of error of the estimates at this point. And but with that being said, we've got to determine, that kind of northern part of how that route interacts with Midtown, yet to determine where the stops are. So those kind of things will help us better fine-tune what that operational cost looks like.
But because it was marginal, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is it really wasn't a very important consideration in terms of the route selection.
Right. They were also, the range of the cost estimates was wider than the difference between the different options of operational costs, if that makes sense.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve this recommendation to move on to City Council.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry. Go ahead.
The subcommittee amended the resolution that's before this board, so if you'd like to, you've already voted on it, but if you'd like to also recommend that the subcommittee's amendment go forward, that would be an appropriate matter.
I forgot that part.
Okay.
Thanks, Amanda.
Okay.
So she's talking about how it's presented on the map. So it's the same thing that we're talking about, but we wanted to make some dashed lines solid and some solid lines dashed to better clear up our intentions. So how do we do that as far as procedurally? Did I get that right?
If you'd like to propose a motion that the recommended route framework that was amended by the subcommittee also be presented to council, then that would be appropriate at this time.
Do we vote on that? Yes, we vote.
That would be appropriate.
So I would...
But, excuse me, but do we need to do that? Because the amendment that we have before us has those changes incorporated in it.
It doesn't actually. There may be a document that was passed out, but the resolution that's before this board includes the original that doesn't have the dotted lines. It just goes up and forward. That's what was on the agenda for purposes of this board.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Your proposal?
So I would move to amend the presentation of that route, that the way we presented it yesterday in the subcommittee be moved forward to City Council.
Which is what you saw in the presentation.
Right. Okay, it's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution has been passed. And now we are on item 8. And item 8 is to receive Consultant Review Committee report and recommend resolution authorizing negotiation of a contract with Johnson & Associates, Inc. for the MAPS 3 Phase 2.
MacArthur.
Oh, okay, sorry, so sorry. Okay. Recommend authorization, negotiation of a contract with MacArthur Associate Consultants, LLC, for the MAPS 3 Phase 2 Project 1 Trail Improvements, I-44 West Trail, Project M3 T002.
This is for the engineering for the next phase of trails, Phase 2 of the trails is the I-44 trail, which goes from the river up to Lake Hefner, roughly along the I-44 corridor in that area. It won't necessarily be within the right-of-way, but it'll be in that corridor. So we went through the usual procedure that all of you have seen by now, where we interview consultants. And what we have here, item 7, 8, and 9, are 3 different engineering firms, and what we anticipate doing with this is breaking this trail project into 3 sections. It's a fairly lengthy trail project, so we're looking at 3 sections. So your first item here, item 7, is authorization to negotiate a contract with MacArthur Associated Consultants for one of those segments of trail.
Can we lump these together and accept all 3 of them with one motion, or do we have to address them individually?
I think you have to do them individually since they're listed on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Do we have any comments?
Just one question. Is there a reason why there are 3 different engineering firms involved in different segments? I thought we were committed to taking the lowest bid. Do they each?
No, these aren't bid. These are negotiated contracts.
Okay.
They're done on the interviews.
Okay, I see.
That we look at, and we like to kind of break it up as we think is appropriate as far as the size of the amount of work and the sizes of firms and things like that.
Okay.
Any comments, Susan?
I might tell you that the subcommittee members that sat in on the interviews, we were very confident with all 3 of these companies, and we're excited about the possibility that we can develop this route and then have 3 different companies maybe at the same time working on the route, save a little time, maybe save a little money, and complete the project also on time. So we're pleased to bring this to the committee using all 3.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Second. All in favor? Opposed? We are approved. On item 8, receive consultant review committee report and recommend resolutions authorizing negotiations of a contract with Johnson & Associate, Inc. for the MAPS 3 Phase 2 Project 2 Trail Improvements, I-44 West Trail, Project M3T002A. David, do we have any comments on that?
Same situation, another firm.
I'd like to recommend approval of the resolution negotiating with Johnson & Johnson for MAPS 3 Phase 2 Project 2 of the trails.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Item number 9, receive consultant review committee report and recommended resolution authorizing negotiations of a contract with MKEC Engineering Consultants, Inc. for the MAPS 3 Phase 2 Project 3 Trail Improvements, I-44 West Trail, Project M3T002B. David, do we need to know anything more about that?
Same situation, third firm.
I'll move approval of the recommended resolution authorizing negotiation of a contract with MKEC Engineering Consultant, Inc. for the MAPS 3 Phase 2 Project 3 of the trail improvement, I-44 West Trail.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. And item number 10, new business. And David?
We do not have anything.
Okay, item number 11, MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board Subcommittee reports. And if we could go ahead and start with Bob on the State Fairgrounds.
We just had the one item yesterday. We did meet yesterday and recommended the one item that we acted on today, approving the final grading. The parking lot paving at the fairgrounds is ongoing, delayed a little bit because of all the rain that we've had, but it's moving along toward completion. The design on the expo building is well underway, and the committee saw some preliminary design drawings that they have, but that not yet for action, but is moving forward steadily.
Okay. Thank you. Nathaniel, do we have any updates or anything you want to say about streetcars? Said it all? Okay. Susan, sidewalks and trails?
I would like to mention our appreciation to the mayor's office, the advisory board, and the subcommittee for attending our ceremony on sidewalks. That was on Monday, August the 19th. We had great press coverage, and it was a nice celebration of our sidewalks. So, and then we're just, we're coming right along on our acquisition of land for Phase 1 part of the trails. So we're excited about that progress, too.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mike, wellness? Okay. And Kim, parks?
Parks Subcommittee did not meet this month, but we continue with our evaluation of the master plan.
Okay. The next item on the agenda, item 12, is informational items, and we'll go to David for that.
Thank you. What you have in your agenda is a series of informational items, and items A through H are real estate purchases. The A and B are for the Whitewater. C through H are for the trails. Item I is contract to Connolly Paving for the Project 2 Phase 1 sidewalk improvements. This one didn't jive with time-wise, and because of requirements to award projects, we went ahead and sent that on to council. They were the low bidder on that project, so they've been awarded that project. So that is to let you know about that. Item J, sorry, I'm a little blind here. Item J is a land purchase for the convention center. And then item K you see on your screen is the Whitewater facility property acquisition status map. We have a couple of parcels that have been purchased and completed. We have a couple in transaction, and those are listed on here. And the red is the ones that have been sent to litigation. Karen, if you want to pull up the next one. We have the River Trails project. This is the one that goes from Council to Meridian. And you can see the process here. We have some property acquired. There's some significant city property there around Crystal Lake, and you can see the status of the other property. So staff's working really hard to try and acquire this property. It's just a long process. Karen, you want to go next? Now, item M is the other half of the Phase 1 trails. Again, the blue is the purchased properties. The uncolored is the city properties, and you can see the status, offers made, and what's under contract presently. So we're getting real close with acquiring all the property on this one.
Is the parcel there with ODOT an actual purchase, or is that going to be a trade?
That will be an easement. It's ODOT property, and we're getting an easement through there to put the trail.
Okay, and David, now an update status of MAPS 3 programs.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chairman. I'll hit a few highlights. As we know, the river course lighting was completed. The windscreen is in design at the river. The Whitewater facility is in design. And you saw today the Phase 2 improvements. So there's a lot of work being done at the river. As Mr. Dover said, Senior Wellness did not meet this month, but the negotiations have just begun. Council has authorized us to negotiate with 3 of those operating partners. Trails and sidewalks, we have Project 1 and 2 of Phase 1 underway, and we just went over the Phase 1 trails. Convention Center conceptual design continues on that. Mr. Nealon did a good job on the fairgrounds. He covered everything I had. And we saw the streetcar route framework today, and work continues on that. Just because we have that route framework, the work has just begun. And as Ms. Lowe said, the design on the master plan continues for the park, so it's a very busy time.
Busy, busy time. Do we have any comments by board, staff, citizens? Anyone? Okay, well, my compliments to the staff that keeps us going and keeps us in line. I appreciate your work and the work of everyone on all the committees, because it is a commitment, and we do appreciate that very much. Now, do we have a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Okay, thank you very, very much.